Hello, guys. So I just finished chatting with Danah Abu Asab. Me and my really good friend Layla interviewed her today, and we talked to her about her graphic design, how sort of her journey started, and the meanings behind her really fascinating illustrations. And we would love for you guys to watch a recap of what happened and uh, also feel free to ask questions in the comments, and I'm sure Dana will be more than happy to answer them. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoy this. We had a really good time chatting with Dana today. And by the way, her Instagram and Etsy shop are called Zeindee, so Zeindee, I believe. Yeah. Uh, so feel free to check her art, and I'm sure you're gonna love it because we do. And please subscribe and share with your friends, and also let us know in the comments below if there is someone that we should interview and who you think is someone who's breaking the rules just like us, and we'd be really happy to do that as well. So
In graphic
yay.
Mhm.
design.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, featuring me on your podcast or YouTube channel.
Of course.
Um, so I am as you said, a Palestinian artist. I am also a freelance graphic designer and an illustrator. I was born and raised in Palestine, but I
Mm-hmm.
moved to Canada when I was 22. And then I met my husband recently, and I moved to the States with him. So I kind of had many different places. Like I kept on relocating for the past, let's say 5, 6 years almost. Um, so yeah, and I originally started, or I originally went into accounting to as my I wanted to be an accountant, and
Hmm.
then with all the relocations that happened to me and like kept on moving, I decided that accounting may not be the option for me. So I decided to go into kind of follow my passion, follow art, and go into graphic design and illustration. Um, so that's kind of my journey. Sorry, what else did you ask me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we had a question about your commissioned artwork. Uh, w- do you mind if I share the screen? And
Oh,
so we put
sure.
up this like very quick slideshow,
Oh.
so that we could show people your beautiful artwork. Uh, so we saw this commissioned work of these like
Hmm.
really cool cartoons, and we also found this.
Hmm.
And I believe this is from a podcast.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah, so
is.
if you could just tell us more about the process, how how people approach you, and
Hmm.
did you always have this idea in mind that you would do this type of commission work, or when you started, or how did it begin with you?
Well, as a freelancer, you kind of depend on commission work, I would say.
Yeah.
For some of my work I got off of different websites such as Upwork, if you're familiar with it, or Fiverr. So basically, people would reach out to you, just random people who have different businesses, and they have their own idea of what they want to create, and kind of they see what I can create and see if it matches with their vision.
Hmm.
So at the beginning when I first started, that's kind of how I would get my most of my work. And then later on, I was able to kind of develop my Instagram account, and I started getting all of my commission work through that. So I've been lucky enough to be able to grow my account and be able to reach many people that way. And the process is kind of simple. I get kind of like a brief on what the client wants to do.
Hmm.
Kind of if they have a brand or if they have guidelines, I kind of follow that, and I merge what I have in mind for it and what they want to create. Um, and yeah, we come up with a final product that everyone's happy with.
That's really cool.
Hmm.
um Layla, I think you had a question
Yeah,
about that one.
about Dema, yeah. So actually, this is one of your ongoing projects, and
Hmm.
it was the one that actually caught our attention, especially the one with the hoverboard.
Yeah,
I think
the
someone explained
skateboard.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, can you tell us more about her, the inspiration behind her and whatnot?
Yeah.
So
Like
actually, yeah.
we see Dema doing all sorts of things like yoga, eating,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
تعتاد, like
goodness, she's so Palestinian, Dama.
yeah.
Her activities, she's eating falafel and stuff.
Yeah, she definitely is. She actually started back in 2010 as a painting.
Oh.
So I was inspired by Palestinian mothers. So I painted her as a just like she's standing with a tobe on, kind of a shirt that has embroidery on,
Yeah.
and a little scarf, like a very light scarf on her face or around her head, I mean, with a teardrop. That's kind of like a had it was like a blood teardrop, I would say, and it was supposed to be dedicated for Palestinian mothers who have lost their children. And I did a few different paintings that are of the same style, and it was kind of inspired by Suleiman Mansour, if you're familiar with him. He's a
Mhm.
Palestinian artist. And then as I like because I moved to Canada and I went through some cultural transitions myself. I kind of stopped that project, and when I moved into the digital illustration world, I decided that it could be an easy medium for me to create these little fun illustrations that have her as a basis, but also make her kind of like, or have her kind of developed in the way that I see like young Palestinian trendy women are, but
Yeah.
also keep her roots kind of in almost every illustration that I create.
Mm.
Yeah, and we saw on your website that you talk about Dama as being a reflection of yourself, sort of, or maybe, like you're inspired, sort of like the inspiration behind her is
Mm-hmm.
very related to your own story. So could you like elaborate a little bit on that and how do you see yourself in her?
For sure. Well, I again because I feel like I since I moved to Canada, for example, I was going through this cultural transition of being from the East, but also trying to be part of the West and kind of adopting what works for me, what works best for me.
Hmm.
And I was trying to kind of self-express in a way or another when I created Dama, or when I recreated Dama recently, when she turned into a digital illustration. So I see myself in some of her illustrations, such as like the foodie illustrations, because I
Hmm.
love Middle Eastern food, Palestinian food, and all these illustrations that are related to that are basically a reflection of me. And I also want to kind of portray my feminist ideas in her as well. So all of her like self kind of like self-love illustrations, or like protesting and kind of demanding women's rights, are also a reflection of myself. But then there's illustrations that are kind of, I try to be as diverse as possible to kind of represent all of the Palestinian women and not just myself.
Mhm. Well,
Mm-hmm.
actually, to bounce off of that, that's very interesting. You say that she is a modern feminist Palestinian woman that
Mm-hmm.
is true to her roots at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you say these ideas are, these feminist ideas that she believes in, yet um, she still holds on to her own roots? So, what can you
Mm-hmm.
explain that, please?
So I would say like the feminist ideas is that she's just as strong and powerful and capable as like men in the society. She's able to go out and do her own thing and not be hindered by any kind of societal restrictions and taboos. But at the same time, like oh, to go back, for example, like going on protests and kind of demanding women's rights and to be like the Me Too movement, for example, I wanted her to be part of that. I also wanted her to, because I like back home, there's kind of women are looked down when they smoke, for example, even till now. And I wanted, although smoking is not a habit, I you know want to kind of tell other women or men to kind of take on, but I also wanted to kind of make a statement and have her smoke, for example, just to kind of show that this is something that women can do and challenge society with it. But at the same time, I love I love her culture. I love to have her represented in like the food and the embroidery, even in the scarf around her head. It's not for religious reasons, but because like Palestinian peasants back in the day, whether Christian or Muslim, did put a scarf on, and I wanted to kind of keep that as part of her identity.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
I
Do you have
mean,
a
Dama
favorite?
can be what?
Do you have a favorite of all these Dama like images?
I think the yoga one that you just showed, I think
This one?
that's my personal favorite.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a question about Dama. I think, yeah, it's so fascinating. So I bet that Dama is very controversial.
Mhm.
Uh, and I mean, our brand is controversial because we're genderless, and Anat
Mhm.
doesn't care that clothing should be gendered, especially like Palestinian embroidery. And so
Mhm.
like we got a lot of negative reactions, and I was wondering if you've heard the same when it comes to Dama, and it could be positive reactions because I'm sure you get both.
Mhm. Um, there's definitely two camps when it comes to Dama. One that, like can see themselves in her and be able to kind of connect with her beyond just the illustration itself, and
Yeah.
just, it's a self-expression kind of way. But then there's the other group that cannot kind of comprehend the idea of having a lady with a scarf on and also be like have a t-shirt on.
Mhm.
That duality, the concept is not able to kind of they're just not okay with it. And I've been in galleries and I've been in just shows where I have all of my illustrations presented and people would be okay with it until they reach certain illustrations that show that, and their faces just completely change. And yeah, but I guess that's part of art, is to challenge the status quo one way or
Yeah.
another, and kind of it's interesting, it's fascinating to see the reactions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Actually, one of there are two other pieces. Salma, the one with the cat, ليش مكشر?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
hold
okay,
on.
we can start
Before
with this
that, I think we should talk about this too.
Mm-hmm.
Just
one.
like I saw this and I told Layla, this is so amazing. I feel like so motivated to like go and like free Palestine and go on the moon. Like I'm sure so many girls feel the same when they see this. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd love to hear more about this.
Well, this was inspired my own personal like childhood dream, I guess. I
Mm-hmm.
was fascinated by astronauts as a kid, and I just wanted to kind of bring that back. And I'm sure other Palestinian girls and boys have had dreams about going to the moon and putting the name of Palestine on the
Mm-hmm.
moon. So yeah, that was kind of the inspiration, and I also wanted to say that you know always be a dreamer and try your best to kind of uh you know keep dreaming, kind of. That's
Yeah.
the concept behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, I love it. And then
Mhm.
there's this one, ستبقون في الذاكرة. This, can you explain it to us actually? Because
For sure.
yeah.
Mhm. So basically I was trying to say that there's more than actually one symbol in this
Okay.
illustration.
Definitely.
Yeah, one of them is the key, which we're all familiar with, and that's basically the key for that all are basically Palestinians who have been exiled and been kicked out of their homes and have kept the key, and are unable to come back. And the door is kind of it's also like part of that. It's kind of a united or one symbol, I guess. And then you have the cactus, and the cactus is a symbolism of the roots that no matter how much like Israeli occupation is trying to kind of uproot us, but we're still there and we're still persistent and we're always going to come back. And so I just tried to kind of utilize all the symbols that I kind of see related to the Palestinian cause, and put them in one way that is interesting to look at, and
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, actually, I thought the door, the way it was divided, I thought that it might be representing a jail cell. So also
Oh.
discuss,
Yeah,
yeah, prisoners, Palestinian
that's what
prisoners.
I thought.
But
Oh wow. Okay. That's really awesome. See, I'm glad that I can, like, with my art, you can, see your own interpretation
That's why I
with
love
that.
art.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
all about people's perspective. Like, I bet
Mm-hmm.
that someone who's not Palestinian can look at this and interpret it given like their experience and like
Mm-hmm.
their way of viewing the world, and it might be totally different.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your interpretation of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
then there's this one, ليش
Mm-hmm.
مكشر. It's so cute, by the way. And
Thanks.
you named this cat Abu Kashra.
Abu
Or
Kashra, yeah.
tell us more about Abu Kashra, please.
Well, I just I've always had this, like, I love cats more than dogs. I'm more of a cat person, I guess. And I always see them as they have their own personality and they have their own kind of attitude. And I thought that was a perfect way of like representing how I see cats and how they are in my mind. And I wanted to slap on the hatta on him just to make him more, relatable.
Yeah.
And it was perfect because, like, at the time when I created this, I was kind of in a bad mood myself. So I'm like, I need to create something that kind of show how I feel. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so cute. ليش مكشر,
Yeah.
it means why are you frowning?
Mm-hmm.
It definitely, if you're frowning, you're definitely not after
No
me.
longer. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one more question on my end, and I think Layla has one more after that. But my question is sort of like a broader question about
Mm-hmm.
just what type of message are you trying to send young girls that follow you and that see what you're up to? And it doesn't just have to be Palestinian girls or Arab girls. It could extend to like way beyond that, because I'm sure your art affects people way beyond Palestine and just
Mm-hmm.
any woman that look at this and see it.
Well, my hope is that I can inspire girls and women, whether Arab or not,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of challenge the status quo. I think our society nowadays kind of has set expectations for us, and it kind of boxes us in, and it grooms us in a way where you have to meet the expectations or you're a failure kind of otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope my art would kind of help push the envelope and kind of help them understand that they can challenge the status quo. They're not alone, and they can they can see, and they can see kind of a version of that rebel in them in my art.
Yeah.
So that's
And I
my
think
hope. Mm-hmm.
I think like most importantly is that what your art says, at least to me, is that sure you can like be a rebel, you could challenge things, but it doesn't mean that you're not Palestinian, that you're not Arab. And that's like something really meaningful
Mm-hmm.
in your artwork, because a lot of times if you do challenge the norms, you are labeled as someone who's not from this culture. And it's so hard to like navigate that. And I think what you do through your illustrations is really like amazing for people who are suffering with this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. When I moved away from Palestine, I felt like I was losing that part of me, and I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of I didn't belong anymore, and I wanted to kind of reinforce the idea that I do belong, and I know I'm part of that society, and I will never kind of lose it, even though my personality is changing and my identity is kind of evolving and adding on, and
Mm-hmm.
not taking away from what I was raised with, and what I know to be true to myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so final question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any future work that we should be anticipating?
There's nothing in particular, but I am working on creating more and more high quality products that people can use on a daily basis, and kind of add a touch of color, a touch of texture, and a touch of the magic of the Middle East, kind of in a way, in their homes and in their lives. So at the moment, that's what I'm kind of working on.
Like your puzzles, I really like the puzzles
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, it's like so helpful in quarantine very fun.
I'm so glad that people are, able to have fun and kind of take away
Yeah,
from all the anxiety that they're probably having at the moment.
exactly.
Hmm.
No, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for chatting with us and for your time. It was really fun.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate this, and I'm really excited to see your work as well. I've been on your website, and it has a bunch of like awesome jackets mainly that I've seen.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
excited too.
Yeah, we're hoping that the entire world would get to see it soon after all.
Mhm.
Yes.
For
And
sure.